If we only look at the verses that Christy just read and not the bigger picture of chapter 11, we're going to miss out on some really important morsels because the reading today begins near the end of a longer unfolding story. There are 28 verses prior to our reading in which the author presents example after example of people of faith who persisted on their journeys for precisely that reason. They had faith. But before the author of Hebrews, and who it was we don't know, ticks off this list of faithful folk, he or she first defines what is meant by the word faith. They write, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." That's chapter 11, verse 1. And then begins the pretty lengthy list of people who were able to persevere because they had faith. Cain and Enoch and Noah and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, which then brings us to where we started today with the Israelites passing through the Red Sea and the walls of Jericho falling down, and Rahab extending hospitality to the Israelite spies, and Gideon doing whatever Gideon did, and a couple guys whose names I don't even recognize, and then David and the prophets. And as I'm reading this list of people who were being praised for their faith, and all God was able to do through them because of that faith, I'm like, wait, what? These imperfect people, these are the ones being lifted up as a role model for me? Because, some of them made seriously bad mistakes. King David, for goodness sake, a nice guy, did lots of good things, but he made some real doozies of mistakes as well. These are the people who are a part of the great cloud of witnesses surrounding me, helping me, encouraging me. I think I might be in serious trouble. But then after I thought that, I realized that if the great cloud of witnesses surrounding me was comprised of only saints and perfect people, I'd never be able to relate to them, right? Or have any hope of measuring up to them. And the same is true for you as well. So maybe it's actually pretty cool that the people the author names are imperfect, like us, but these imperfect people persevered and endured. They kept the faith, and God worked through them mightily. And so can we. And so will God. They ran a race, and they managed to keep their eyes fixed on God, and now we are the ones who are to run the race set before us with perseverance, our eyes fixed on Jesus, on whom our hope depends. So many people, just like us, who stood strong despite the struggle they faced, and they might be gone in body, but they are not gone in spirit. They are with us, they surround us, they walk beside us, and God wants us to be comforted by their presence. And remember that they had faith that God would be true to his promises, and we should too. And that's the intersection that we stand at today and every day, that intersection where the uncertainties of our life and our trust in the certainty of God's faithfulness meet. And what direction we go as we stand in that intersection is up to us. I used to run track. Maybe I've mentioned this before. Did any of you run track? I ran the 800 meters, which sometimes they call the half mile. It's actually a tad less than that. It's a long-distance sprint, which is an oxymoron. No one should sprint that far. It sounds like a great idea when you're fresh out of the starting gate, but as you're coming up that last stretch, you start to question your life choices that led you there. I don't like to brag, but I was not all that good, actually. Although my final 2 years, I did qualify for the state track meet, running on that bright blue track at Drake Stadium in Des Moines, which was terrifying. And going into that meet, our girls' 4x800 relay team had been state champs for 5 years. So the pressure to hold on to that title was pretty high. So let's just say that it is a real drag to be the reason that a 5-year winning streak ends. Second place, friends. Pretty sure it was my fault since I was the slowest of the 4 runners, but I've had therapy and I'm okay now. But you don't have to be a runner to run a race. In fact, we all do it every single day. It actually has zero to do with our legs because life itself is the marathon, and so is the faith journey. A long distance, make sure you preserve your energy because you're nowhere near being done yet, race. And it's easy to get weary and heavy laden. So I don't know about you, but I need the words that our text shares with us today. Let us run with perseverance the race that is set before you, our eyes fixed on Jesus. It's one of my favorite verses in the Bible from the book of Hebrews, which we don't really look at often enough, and which sounds like it should be in the Old Testament, but it's actually a letter that was written to the Jewish Christians about 30 or 40 years after Jesus' resurrection. And the people that were receiving this letter were members of the early church who were being persecuted and just about ready to walk away from their faith in Jesus because of how hard things were. So the writer very deliberately reminded them of God's faithfulness to their ancestors, which was made apparent especially in times of struggle. These people endured hardship and uncertainties and suffering and imprisonment and even death, but still they went out in faith that God would be true to his promises. And the book of Hebrews really highlights the fact that faith is made manifest at very difficult intersections. Like I said earlier, those places where uncertainty and trust in God meet. That verse I mentioned earlier, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. It speaks of unknown things and yet the willingness to believe in God nonetheless, to trust in God in times of uncertainty and challenge. Those times when we are seriously tempted to say, forget it, I'm done. And at these intersections, we have the power to choose which direction we are going to go. Will I choose to continue to trust and believe in God despite these horrible things that are happening to me right now? Or will I cut bait and run before things get any worse, saying, well, I gave God a try, but it turns out this faith thing really isn't for me? Yesterday at Mike's funeral, the song Chariots of Fire was played, and it was significant to the family, and I shared the story behind this. And the song is part of the movie by the same name. It's the true story of Eric Liddell, a man who ran in the 1924 Olympics for Scotland, and then interestingly went on to become a missionary, and later in life said that it was being a missionary that was really the true race in his life, not that run in the Olympics. Before he ran in the Olympics, he ran in a meet between England and France. And in one of the races he was in that day, he got off to a bad start. If you've seen the movie, you already know this probably. The gun went off. There was a lot of shoving to get in front of the pack, kind of like us after worship when we race down the hall to be the first at coffee fellowship. And as runners were shoving each other, Liddell's foot caught on someone else's foot, and he fell down. As we all would do, he sat there dazed, probably wondering what just happened, when one of the officials screamed at him, "Get up and run!" And so he jumped to his feet and he took off after the pack. By now, they were far away down the track, and he had a long distance to make up, but he pursued them, managing to pull into fourth place. And then with 40 yards to go, he pulled into third place, and then he pulled into second place. And at the moment he reached that tape stretched across the finish line, he came neck and neck with the runner in first place, and he stuck out his chest, and he won the race, at which point he collapsed, exhausted, and he had to be helped off that track. Sometimes in our lives, there are people who yell at us to get up and keep going. And sometimes there are people who have to literally carry us off the track. And sometimes we are the people doing the yelling and the carrying. That's the great cloud of witnesses that surrounds each and every one of us that God has truly blessed us with. So here we stand at an intersection. And we better get used to recognizing these intersections because we are going to find ourselves there every single day. And our task is to decide which way to go. Forward in faith with Jesus despite the challenges, trusting that there are those who have gone before us who were able to endure, so maybe we can too. Or back to the ways of this world, back to the things that are easier, frankly, because following Jesus is just too hard. And sometimes we're going to choose to go back, friends. That's part of the journey, I think. And I think God knows this about us and loves us despite this and throws as many life preservers our way as are needed to keep us from turning around. And examples of these life preservers that God throws when we're sinking are things like certain scriptures that we read, which really stick in our brain or touch our heart, or healing music that just washes over our soul, or moments when we feel that God is nudging us or holding us or maybe even dragging us a little, or times when God sends people to come alongside us to help us on our way. It's the moments when we do not have it within us to run with perseverance, when our cloud of witnesses takes a hold of us. And some grab us by our ankles, and some grab us by our wrists, and some support our heads while they carry us off the track, and some carry our purse and dig through it for loose change. There's one in every crowd, right? That is the power of community. Look for the intersections in your life where the uncertainties, the challenges, all the places where we are broken and need a little mending, all the places where we need a little hope, meet you head on. Look for those places, and yet coming from a different direction is something else. The willingness to trust God, the tiny suspicion that God might actually be good after all, and faithful, and loving, and healing, and saving. Life is a race, and it's going to be full of crossroads. And some of them we will breeze through, and others we'll have to sit and wait for a while until we figure out which way we're supposed to go. But all the while standing along those sidelines, cheering us on all the way, encouraging us to hang in there, holding up signs that say, "I ran the race with perseverance, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt," is our great cloud of witnesses, with our very own Noah and Moses and Abraham. Only their names are Glenn or Mary or Mike or Bill or Nancy. So I have a poem for you. As we go out from this sermon, Lisa Ann Moss DeGrenia wrote a poem called "Run, Beloved, Run." She says, "You are surrounded by great and good companions, with witnesses who ran the race before you, now cheering you on, inspiring you with their courageous faith. With witnesses running beside you, churning up the dust of this well-traveled path, encouraging you with the steady beat of their beautiful feet. Run, beloved, run. Lay aside every weight, every worry, every excuse, every inner critic shouting against inspiration. Lay aside the sin that clings so closely, every self-serving motivation, every self-medicating choice, every weak thing you've trusted more than God. Lay them aside and run. Run, beloved, run. Run with perseverance the race, daring, enduring, alive, looking not to the dust, but to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Look not to the right or to the left. Look to Jesus. Focus. Follow. Run. Run, remembering joy is your strength. Remember and endure, for this race comes with a cross, a course of blood and tears, mocking and piercing. Take it up and run. Sit down in the next life, not this one. Run, beloved, run, following and looking and remembering him who endured, so that you may not grow weary or lose heart, for your strongest step is yet to come. So, beloved, with the sure and certain faith that we are never alone on this crazy, miraculous, hard, messy, wonderful journey, let us run together, keeping our eyes on the prize of Jesus, ever mindful that though we might not see anyone physically beside us, they are there. Thanks be to God for community, companions, and Christ, our true prize. Thanks be to God for you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Don't shove me now, but run alongside me and help me and all of us to endure. Amen.